Good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to this afternoon School Business Tech live stream. I'm joined by Russell Dalton, who's the Director of Operations at the Rivers C Multi-Academy Trust. Russell's today is going to be talking me through his experiences with technology adoption and just how this has been accelerated over last year's lockdown. The question is, should school business professionals really immerse themselves in technology, or is there a potential halfway house from their previous ways with everything that we've learned? In this chat, we're going to examine just how you get everybody on board with your technology strategy in your school and make sure you harness those efficiencies, because if everyone's pulling in different directions in your school or trust, then it's going to have an adverse effect. But most importantly, and something that I know Russell is particularly passionate about, is we're also going to discuss ways in which you can protect yourself and your personal and family time from when you're kind of doing this hybrid working on site and working on home. Russell, as I mentioned, is the Director of Operations at the Rivers C Multi-Academy Trust, but he's also a fellow at the Institute of School Business Leadership and a personal friend of mine. So good afternoon, Russell. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much. Right.
Good.
We're going to kick off with a straight question, which is, why shouldn't we all just immerse ourselves in technology?
Well, good question. And I think in some respects, we should immerse ourselves in technology. We're 21st century and, we've got technology surrounding us 24/7 now. I think the last 12 months has accelerated the point where we're at now. But equally, I wasn't born a 55-year-old man. And I find now at 55 that technology is starting to overtake me if I'm not careful, and keeping up with it. I sometimes feel like I'm my dad trying to work a VCR machine with everything that's out there at the moment. I think the question though of why we should be more considerate about being immersed in technology. There are two big things that every school business professional talks about with their working time and what they would want. One is time to do things, and the other one is funding. So technology isn't cheap. Let's face it, we all know that. So immersing in ourselves in technology is probably something that we would all love to do, but we probably don't have the correct level of spare reserves to invest in that all at this current time. The other thing is time. So, we need time to research what is the best thing for our environment. And before we jump into something, how future-proof is that going to be for us? So how much are we going to know that what we buy now is still going to be relevant in 12 months' time or in the relatively short future? So I know that's a bit of sitting on the fence answer, which isn't like me. I'm quite black and white, but I do think we should immerse ourselves in it, but in a cautious way to make sure that we are making the right decisions for the environment that we're in.
And I think you're absolutely right, because the kind of people always forget, when you see the sales product and the person's demonstrating to it, that's got all the data in, that's been set up correctly, that person knows how to use it, so they're getting all the efficiencies. But when you take any sort of software product or technology product on, you get it in a box, right? Your iPhone isn't a wonderful device only when it's all hooked up to everything and you've got your apps on and your emails and your contacts all embedded in. But until then, it's pretty useless kind of block, really, isn't it? So yeah, I absolutely agree. I think thinking really, what is the investment from it if I want the efficiencies out of it? How much time do I have to also, as well as cash, I suppose, invest into it? That's a big thing to able to get that. Would you say?
Yeah, and I think, and I'm sorry if I'm insulting any head teachers that are listening to this podcast, but I think you also have to consider that when somebody goes to a conference, they will see the next best thing that their school or trust needs. They then will come back and say, we really need this, we've really got to buy it, but without thinking of how it will integrate with everything else.
Yeah.
As a member of staff, what you don't want is to be logging into 10 different things to do a single job. You want something to be nice and easy. You don't want to make, to have those issues of, okay, now I've got to log into this to get that. And you want everything to be dynamic if you can have. So yeah, we've all been in the situation where somebody's come back and seen the next best thing that they need to buy into, but without considering the joined up approach of how it will work with everything else. I think that is something that becomes a real big frustration that we need to overcome.
Massively. So my next question then, how do school business professionals, how do we go about managing our relationship with technology, and what approach would you recommend?
I think, well, one is understanding it ourselves. So, I think we have got to be the driving force behind it. So, but we've got to understand what benefit it is going to bring, what value for money we're going to get out of it, and also what are the knock-on effects. So how much training are our staff going to have to utilize that technology? What are they going to get out of it? I think, as I mentioned before, how much is it going to integrate with other systems we've got and other software that we've got at the moment? So we've got to look at the cost benefit of it, the longevity of it, and all that. So we have to understand those ourselves. Now, for some of us, technology is difficult to spell, let alone understand what it's going to do and how it's going to do benefit us. So we've got to do our background knowledge, or we've got to bring people in that we can trust to advise us on that. So if we're going to embrace it, we have to understand it, and we have to understand the benefits of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, because on one of the earlier ones we were talking about actually how do you get your relationships or the most out of your MIS provider, and it was actually about building that relationship with the provider. Don't look for providers that just give you the product and walk away, but actually look for providers that have a genuine interest in seeing you be successful with that tool, because there's a mutual benefit between the two. And let's say I'm committed to technology, as I think a lot of school business professionals are. We have to embrace it. We're using it, whether it's your MIS platform, whether it's your finance system, whether it's any of that stuff. But what would be your specific tips if I wanted to do some internal reflection? What are the things that I could be doing to make sure I'm getting efficiencies for a multi-academy trust? And because you are running a trust, you're running 15 schools. What are the efficiencies that I'm going to need to look at?
So I think, just going back on a point you've just said there, though, I think one of the things we need to do is decide what we want, rather than to get an outside provider to tell us that this is what you want. Yeah. So we are the customer. We are the people that are going to be using this every day. So when we are looking for something, it should be based on the specifications we want, rather than a salesman coming to us and say, you want this, and this is everything that will do. And you might never have really needed it, but suddenly they're convincing you that you do. So I think it is first understanding what you want and what you need, and the specifications to do that. And yes, we are as with the amount of schools we've got, we can go out and dictate that to providers. We don't have to just say, yeah, we'll accept what you give us. So we can have those negotiations, and yes, there's always compromises. We have to make, we have to understand that. Or if there is something specific we want, then it's going to cost us to do it. So tech efficiencies, well, economies of the scale is the big one. Now, just because we are a MAT doesn't mean that we are the only ones who can get efficiencies of economies of scale to start with. Start looking at how you might be able to do things more locally with other schools if you don't have the benefit of being in a MAT. We've set a standard specification for things. So, for instance, we've just procured for all of our teachers in the whole of the trust. We've just procured them laptops. So we've got a standard specification for it. We can then go and get massive economies of scale by just procuring that amount all in one go. Equally, that's now going to help us budget. So we've decided that those laptops potentially will have a 3-year life. So the best way of dealing with it is we've now looked at leasing. So we're going to lease that cost over a 3-year period, and then our staff know that they're going to have a replenishment of a laptop in 3 years' time. So again, we're keeping on top of technology. When we did this, and again, I'm not giving tips on or getting backhanders from anything, but we used HP and got cash back from HP for the number of devices that then we could return back to them. All devices. Okay. And when we brought this in from our schools, we were bringing in computers that were 10, 15, 20 years old. And you have to think, firstly, how are staff still delivering top standard education on that type of age of equipment, and how are children learning on it? Even some software wouldn't work on some of it. So that's why we need to make sure we're replenishing as rapidly as we can, but also as cost effectively as we can. So efficiencies, one is the economies of scale, and utilizing where we are doing big procurements like that, utilizing a lease scheme, but also looking at the long, what's the warranty on these things. So we're not going to enter a 3-year lease into something if, let's say, a whiteboard screen or interactive screen has got a 7-year warranty on it. We might as well procure it and then look at replenishment in 7 years' time. We've now got a strategy which is looking at all of our devices. So rather than being piecemeal, we're going wholesale. So looking at our admin devices, we've now got a standard specification for our admin devices. We have gone out to providers to say, okay, if we procure anything in the next 3 to 6 months, we want a catalogue price off you, so all of our schools will know how much it's going to be, and then we can negotiate that also with them on that. The final one really on efficiencies is only buy what you require. So we have noticed on things like subscriptions for software and other such things that they're just rolling over annually. And when we did a full audit of all of the software and the apps and everything else, there was lots that were just annually turning over, but nobody was ever using. Yeah. So, now we keep on top of all of our contracts, all of our apps, all of our leases, so we can efficiently see when we need to use them, utilize them, or get the best out of them. So, I think it goes without saying, as a school business professional, we should know how to gain the best efficiencies, using economies of scale, using best value. But technology now can really help us in gaining those efficiencies by looking at, whether we need multiple devices or single devices, where we could be utilizing a device to take home and bring in rather than have 2 devices to do that. So there's lots of areas where we can gain efficiencies, not just in the multi-academy trust, but in single school environments as well.
I couldn't agree more with you, kind of about recurring. Just all software subscription model, or all software products have generally moved to now a subscription model. Where it's either monthly, annual licensing. And you're right. They're like, heck, even in my business, and my team, I've got stuff that just rolls over every year, and it's difficult to manage and maintain that. But we did an audit once, and this was about 5 years ago, and we reviewed all our systems of just what was wasting, and the number was was disappointingly high, and I was like, I thought we were managing this, and everyone was like, but it just happens. And I think somebody has to own that, don't they?
Well, and sometimes somebody will say, well, that subscription was only £100 for the year or something like that. But then when you start multiplying that up around all these £100 a year, you soon get into multiple thousands of pounds. So I think one bit of advice that I remember, and this is just a general procurement bit of advice that I was given about contracts and leases and things like that, was literally the moment you get it is give notice on it. So you don't roll over to another year that you don't necessarily want. So that has saved us a significant amount in doing that straight away. It is a novel idea to some people that they give notice the moment they've actually set up a contract, but it saves you money and pain in the long run.
Absolutely. And my final question, Russell, which I ask everyone who comes on the show, but is, what is your prediction for school business technology over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't ask me that question 12 months ago, because it'd have been a lot different to where we are now. I think when we first came into lockdown, we all were saying things like, oh, this is going to revolutionize the way we work, and we're going to embrace virtual meetings, and flexible working is going to be something that becomes commonplace. We've now got into the new norm, which actually, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm getting a little bit sick and tired of virtual meetings and only seeing everybody in 2D. I think it will have a place still. So I think that platforms that allow virtuality and having virtual meetings will be commonplace moving forward. I think we've got to be careful that doesn't eat into our time and become a time thief, because instead of a 5-minute chat, it's easy to turn into a 30-minute meeting and things like that. So my prediction is, yes, virtual, we will always be here now, and we'll embrace it. I think that's going to be, in some respects, good, because we can have the halfway house with that. We can decide whether we will virtually attend a meeting or physically be there. So it'll allow more attendance at meetings. It'll allow easier access to things like conferences and things like that. With regards to physical tech, I think advances will be made quite rapidly in things. I think we will see the things that probably would have been here in 10 years' time will be with us in the next sort of 3 years instead. So I think that will bring down the cost of things. I think we can see rapid improvements in broadband provision, and that's what's needed. Let's face it, if we want to deliver virtual education, we have to have the best broadband facility that we have. So you can put as many fantastic devices on something, if it's not robust, then it's not going to be any good for you. So I think I'd like to think the biggest advance is going to be in the broadband provision that we have and our networks within schools. Now, something I'm lobbying hard for, and maybe colleagues want to think about this also, is we lost tech funding a few years ago in schools. I think that is something, whether we get that direct or whether the government can start investing in better infrastructures, technical infrastructures for schools. So when we make procurements, we've got the best networks, the best broadband provision that we can have. I'm not talking about a super fast line that comes to your school. These need to be leased lines now. We need to be utilizing them for everything we can. So that's I'd like to think the speed of our provision will be significantly improved in less than 3 to 5 years. I think it's got to be done now if we want that. The other thing is, I think, and I'm sorry to let you know this, colleagues, I think we are going to lose things like snow days, school closures because of mains bursts. I think also probably for some children who have sick days, they will have still home education that they'll be able to access. So I think now the days of maybe not doing a whole 190 days teaching in a year is probably over. I think virtual learning or virtual education is here to stay now, and there is no excuses for it. For us as workers, does it mean that we will be able to work more flexibly? Dare I say this? I think that we will probably have more demand on us. I think we have got to, and I think my biggest concern around that is with our work-life balance. We already talk about the issues with work-life balance at the moment, and I think I am really concerned technology is going to move to a way that you will not get any work-life balance at all. When you go on holiday, you will have to find that shed in the middle of a field which has no internet or mobile phone signal if you want to have a total shutdown and a rest. So I think there are going to be some really good sides moving forward. Technology will really help us with everyday things, but I think there will be the downsides as well, in that we are 24/7 now moving forward.
Plugged in. Russell, as always, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today, and really insightful in everything that you've been talking about. Obviously, you've been, you are well recognized within the profession, and obviously the work that you've been doing with schools and with Multi Academy Trust, you talk with real insight and knowledge and experience. So thank you very much for all our viewers today. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to make sure you can follow on with all our episodes. All that leaves me to say is thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you. Cheerio, everyone.